and councillors, I welcome you to the meeting for the 9th of July. In the event of an emergency, the building may be evacuated. You will be required to vacate the building by the rear entrance and gather at the breezeway between the library and art gallery buildings. This is council's designated emergency muster point. Under no circumstances is anyone permitted to re-enter the building until the all clear has been given, the area deemed safe by authorised personnel. In the event of an evacuation, a member of council staff will assist any persons present with a disability to vacate the building. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Councillor Duffy is travelling, and if he was in range, he was going to dial in, but it appears he hasn't at this stage, so he will be an apology for the meeting.
Can I have a mover? Seconder? All those in favour? Against? This council meeting is being live streamed and recorded. By speaking at this council meeting, you agree to be live streamed and recorded. Please ensure that if and when you speak at this council meeting, that you ensure you are respectful to others and use appropriate language at all times. Orange City Council accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. A recording of this council meeting will be made for administrative purposes. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land. I would also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri nation and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present. 1.4, any declarations of interest? Councillor Evans.
Mayor, I'll declare an interest in item 4.3 of notices of motion, Summer Street Christmas shopping event, as I'm a retailer and member. However, not board member of Business Orange. I'll stay in the room and still vote on the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miletto. Oh, sorry, I'll go Councillor Miletto, then Councillor Kinghorn. Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As per our previous meeting, item 4.1, with regards to notice of rescission, as I'm the president of the Orange District Football Association, it's a voluntary position. An interest in that.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I have two. Item in the Planning and Development Committee, item 2.2, Summer Street. That is because my husband has done environmental consultancy work for the applicant on this site. Item 2.3, Gartra Way. These applicants here are good people. They're my neighbours though, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to vote. So that's a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest. I won't vote on it.
Thank you. Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. A couple from me. First, in the main council meeting, item 6.1, the proposed sale of vacant land 94 Woodward Street, less than significant non-pecuniary interest. I did have a meeting with representatives of the organisation that has submitted an EOI. They requested a meeting with me through council. I had a meeting with them with a council staff member present. We only discussed the process for the EOIs and that they would be able to put in an EOI as anyone else who was eligible and interested would be able to. So I don't consider that prejudices my consideration of the item at all. And in the Planning and Development Committee, a less than significant non-pecuniary interest in item 2.2, 1 Bathurst Road, just because I live within the neighbourhood just surrounding that area. But again, I don't consider that the application has any significant direct implications for my amenity where I reside. Thanks.
Councillor McDonald. No, I don't think it is. It needs to stay on.
Bought some new ones, Downing. I'd just like to declare a less than significant non-pecuniary interest in item, get my numbers right, 2.3 of the PDC, as I live in the neighbourhood but not in the immediate vicinity.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Just like to declare an interest in item 4.1, the rescission motion, as I am Secretary of Bloomfield Junior Rugby League, so that would affect us as well. But I'm happy to stay in the room and vote on the matter.
Councillor Whitten.
Mayor, I'll be declaring an interest in the Finance Policy Committee for item Unary. I'll be staying in the room, but Octec Limited is the landlord for Housing Plus. So in the Planning Committee, I'll be declaring an interest Unary in item 2.2 as the CEO of Octec organisation owns some land nearby, and I'm the chairman of the board.
I'll be declaring an interest in the same things. Got those? Thank you, councillors. We've got a few tonight. We will now adjourn the meeting for the conduct of the public forum. Have 7 speakers. Our first speaker is Mr. Riddell Leslie. Riddell, could you come up to Mr. Leslie? Could you come up to the podium? I'll just introduce all the councillors first before you start. We've got Councillor Whitten, Councillor Greenhouse, Councillor McDonald, Deputy Mayor Councillor Power, Councillor Mallard, Councillor Peterson, Councillor Floyd, Councillor Evans, Councillor Kinghorn, and Councillor Miletto. You've got 5 minutes, Mr. Leslie.
Thank you for this opportunity to address the council on the background of our DA to demolish our barn on 1 Gartrell Way. Deirdre and I have lived on the property for 35 years, approximately a third of the life of the barn, and have used it for storage. We are asking to be allowed to demolish the building as residential development is accelerating around us. The building restricts further development of our property as recommended in the area's LEP. It's also becoming an anomaly in the area as it is an imposing, deteriorating structure, 2 stories high, in a totally inappropriate setting. Now, we have engaged with council staff and council heritage consultants for many years. We've also employed 2 heritage consultants, Ray Christensen and James Nicholson, for their opinion. As well, we've engaged structural engineers Cook and Rowe for their opinion on feasibility of maintaining or restoring the building. This required substantial financial input from us, follow the due process and rules. The barn has a heritage listing placed time around 2012. However, in September 2011, we received a letter from council advising that the barn was not to be listed, but the listing happened anyway. Council Planning Director has investigated the process thoroughly, and there appears to be no detail in the council files as to why the listing occurred, indicating a possible administrative error. And the bureaucratic process continues, however, as planning staff must follow codes and legislation to our detriment. As far as I know, only the director has inspected the site, but none of the other planning staff involved in the report our DA have. The original development plan for the Borrowdale estate did not have the barn represented, but did have a cool store and shed on the plan. These are now still present on another property along Gartrell Way. The barn was never a packing shed, according to the previous owner, who lived there for 50 years from the early 1940s. It was used as a stable, and at least over the past 35 years has been used for storage. The barn is deteriorating and in poor condition. It was built with primitive techniques, with tree trunks as poles embedded directly into the roughly laid concrete floor. Recycled corrugated iron with pre-existing holes was nailed to the wood, and little bracing has been used. Concrete floor is now cracking due to underlying rabbit warrens and water ingress. There are large areas of rotting wood and rusting corrugated iron. In 1992, a mini tornado blew away half the roof and some of the walls. This was repaired with new corrugated iron. This area is now the only unblemished part of the barn. I think that without an expensive rebuild, the barn is likely to collapse in the not too distant future. According to the structural engineer's report, significant works would be required to bring the current framing and slabs up to the level of Australian standards. any potential reuse of the building would require replacing the concrete floor and the iron cladding and strengthening or replacing the structural support. This would require completely dismantling the building. The report concluded that reuse of the barn as a habitable building would not be financially feasible and would result in a completely altered structure with little resemblance to the original building. Cannot afford to contribute a potentially large amount of money that would be required in the hope that the barn could be used for more than just storage. It's difficult to imagine a commercial use in what is becoming a denser residential area. If there was subdivision with the barn sectioned off in its own block, adjacent blocks would have their houses overshadowed and devalued significantly by the size of the barn. I think if the DA is approved, an archival photographic record could be made and any usable components could be recycled, possibly be used to rebuild a replica barn in a more appropriate area, such as the wetlands or botanic gardens. Happy to take any questions if you like, or if further consideration needs to be made, we're happy for councillors to visit our property and inspect the building.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. That's 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Jeffrey Chapman on PDC item 2.2, developing an application DA 514/20211, 1 Bathurst Road. Mr. Chapman, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name's Jeff Chapman. Jesse Chapman and I purchased number 1 Bathurst Road back in 2019. The former church has been in operation since the early 1900s and is opposite Hungry Jackson, Gomez and Guzman town. Together with the Bowen Terrace, the former church forms an impressive entry to Orange Summer Street and the commercial area. Josie and I have had prior experience in operating a business in a huge location, the old convent, Boronor, on the side of the former Mary MacKillop Convent. We successfully brought the 1875 original convent building and the 1885 church back to life as a venue for functions and accommodation. In 25 years of operation, there have been no complaints regarding noise or any other aspect of operations there. Since purchasing 1 Bathurst Road, we have worked to maintain the building and respect its heritage. We have repaired roofs, we have repaired electrical faults, replaced vandalised windows and repaired smashed lead lights. Cracked front steps have been replaced, as have rotten floorboards. Nearly all cases of age-appropriate materials have been used, making the work done almost invisible to a casual observer. If the DA is approved, the building will remain largely as you see it today. Positive DA submissions outnumbered the negative by more than 2 to 1, recognising that bringing the building back to life will be a positive for Orange residents as well as visitors. I'd like to thank all those who did make submissions and who also turned up tonight to provide moral support. A special thanks to Liz Butler and Michael Caulfield sitting over here. They were owners of one of the Bowen Terraces and produced an excellent video which we did send to councillors quite a while ago now, but it really did say what we needed to say in about 2 minutes, which was pretty good. I'd also like to thank Peter Basher, the architects Ben and Sally Johnson, and heritage consultant Mark Fennick for the work they've done. Almost finally, I'd like to thank councillors for your consideration of the DA. Those who viewed the video and those who came along to do a site inspection, deep in their knowledge of what we're trying to achieve there, and we appreciated that. In conclusion, council's planning professionals have stated the proposal is assessed as compliant. The heritage item will be conserved. There are no aspects of the development that are unsuitable for the proposal. Approval is recommended. So thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Our next speaker is Mr. Charles Everett on exactly the same development application.
Thank you. I'm on the same subject and I wish to speak against it. We made any suggestions in our first objections earlier in the piece. This DA has been in council since 2021, advertised over Christmas in 2021. 324, all the regulation that was related to this DA without any consultation with the public. An amended DA was submitted in May 24. The new DA has addressed some of the problems that were in the original DA, but has not shown any consideration to the adjoining residents or the area in general. All cafe may be acceptable, but a cafe restaurant operating 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week is not appropriate for the site. It will impact on the whole neighbourhood. The kitchen is adjacent to a New South Wales heritage listed building. The working hours of visage would make the adjoining unit unlivable. There are 3 main items that would affect the adjoining property: the kitchen, bin placement, noise and light from outdoor seating. Kitchen's a very noisy area with all the washing machines, grinders, rollers. Then you have the main items, exhaust fans, refrigerator and air conditioning, all very noisy. The exhaust fan is not only noisy but smelly. Unfortunately, I've had experience with noisy and smelly exhaust fans, but I learned a lot when we were taken to court. The smell is minute particles of food that are blown into the air on normal days. They are blown away, but cloudy cold days like today, they drop and over time form a smelly layer around the close area, in this case over a heritage building. Expenditure fillers are required to overcome this, and soundproof boxes constructed around the duct. This DA has approved this should be included. Soundproofing should be incorporated in the lining of the kitchen. Air conditioning should not be well away from the adjoining dwelling. The bin area is adjacent to the outdoor seating area of the adjoining unit and close to the kitchen. This should be moved and a solid structure provided that is easily washed and hides the bins. There is no sound or light barrier shown to prevent noise and light from outside seating area from disturbing the neighbours' parking. The methodology used in the document to arrive at the number of parking lots required is fanciful. Using the church parking numbers issued years ago when vehicle numbers were low and churches were used mainly on Sunday. The restaurant that is suggested to open 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, does not equate. If they want to use these figures, parking per square metre, they must then consider the new fully enclosed area outside the area. The area will be fully enclosed with lock gates and become extra usable floor space. There is no mention of parking costs or anything in the present development application. There's a number of cars that will be using this 7 days a week in a cul-de-sac is outrageous. And how are they going to get garbage trucks and delivery goods into the area? Today's garbage trucks will need about 5 turns to get around, and they're going to have fully parked areas. It's going to be very inconvenient to the people of East Orange. I'm fully against the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Everett. Our next speaker is Helen McBurney on item 4.3, Notice of Motion, Summer Street Christmas Shopping Event.
Thank you, councillors. So the reason we've would like to see this happen again is it did happen many, many years ago, and I think there was some talk at that stage that it created some social behaviour issues, but I think the demographic of the areas have changed a lot since that, and we do get requests of why we don't have one and surrounding towns do. Myself, I have a business on the corner of Summer and Anson Street, Chaos and Karma. Last year I did a sip and shop after hours from about 5 to 9 on a Friday night. I asked my neighbour, Marion Tex, if they wanted to join in with us, because I'm a bit of a believer that, you know, the other businesses are community, not competition. Hartford's then asked if they could join. Bobby McGee's then asked if they could join. Regency also. So we had quite a few businesses. We organised all of the posters, advertising, food, you know, all of those things for the night, and it was really good. And we said we'd try and elevate it this year. We just didn't have enough time to speak to council last year about it. So those businesses and more are willing to participate again. I think as a whole, Orange is looked at as a tourism destination, but it would be nice to see a little bit more emphasis into our retail sector. There's a lot on food and wine, but it could be incorporated into the night. I would like to see maybe a working party between myself and maybe some of the businesses to see if we can push the matter forward. Whether it involves a road closure or not, I understand there would be issues with that and also with parking. So perhaps if we bring other stalls into it as well, they could set up on the pavements, which are quite wide, in front of any buildings that are empty, and maybe give it a bit more of a vibe that way. Or if you wanted to close that part between Anson and, say, Sale, then there would be parking on the side streets. But I guess those are details that could be sorted out at a later date. It would hopefully mean that the Christmas lighting would extend up into that half. I think we don't have the cuddle lights at that time of the year. Suggestions would be probably the second Friday or Saturday in December. The very first weekend in December falls 29, 30 and the 1st, I think it is. The 1st is Millthorpe Market, so as not to cross over or impede accommodation, I think it would be best to move it further into December, so the next weekend on either a Friday or Saturday night. Maybe just from, say, 5 to 9 on a Friday, or even, you know, 4 to 8 on a Saturday, just depending what council thinks and is most appropriate. And that's really what we're looking for, is just maybe some consultation. Maybe we can do something else. So many towns around us do it. It would be really nice to see it brought back into Orange's plans, and if we do it on a smaller scale this year, see how successful it is. Maybe we can up the ante next year, seek funding for it if necessary, to expand it to the whole street. It can always incorporate it with something else that runs into Robertson Park or something like that. It just needs a little bit more forethought. But yes, just for consideration, we would like to hold a street party of some sort in that top block for the retail, food, outlets, whatever, and whether we bring in other store holders on the footpath is up to you guys as well. So that's pretty much all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms McBurney. Our next speaker is Mr Mitch Colton on the same issue.
Good evening, councillors. I'm speaking as the Vice President of Business Orange in support of creating a working group to discuss a late night trade, not like street party-esque thing. The reality is that, you know, as Helen said, we do so much in Orange and there is so much branding and awareness for tourism and hospitality. Retail is kind of a happy accident that chuffs along the side of it, but the reality is that without having a strong retail sector in town, going to detract strongly from our food and wine and all of our out-of-town business that we bring, all our out-of-town money that we bring in, because the reality is that I've booked in a lunch somewhere, I've booked in a wine tour, I've booked in a dinner somewhere, and now I have 3 or 4 hours to kill in town. And if there's nothing to do, I'm probably going to come once, do the things and go away. But if I have nice things to do in town, I'm probably going to keep coming back. And that's certainly the feedback I get from people we talk to. The reality is we need something to kick off the end of year retail season, and we would just like to have a conversation with council about that. To you know, as Helen said, have a working group, because, you know, the retailers of Summer Street have things they would like to do. You know, Business Orange certainly wants to support that, but you know, as we all know here, you know, council is a beast, and if we're not having a good line of communication, we don't know as an average outsider who to talk to, what to talk about, and it's all good and well to come up with grand ideas of what we want to do, but the reality is we don't know what's feasible, and having that open forum to work through that with council makes it easier, and we get a better business community as a result, and everyone's happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colton. Our next speaker is Mr. Andrew Cooper. Item 4.1, notice of rescission, Super Sopper budget 2024/2025.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. My name's Andrew Cooper. I'm the referees coach and treasurer of the Orange and District Football Referees Association, and I've been on that committee for the last 5 years. I'm here on behalf of the Football Referees Association and our 70 registered referees and associated parents and supporters to speak against the rescission motion to be heard at this meeting, and to speak for the previously passed motion which set aside budget funds to purchase a Super Sopper to be used at Sir Jack Brabham Park and other Orange sporting grounds, not only for soccer but also for cricket and other sports as required. The ODFRA, the Orange Referees Football Association's 70 registered referees referee games for 61 junior and senior teams, which is approximately 28 to 30 fixtures a week. And during the 2023 season, we refereed 631 fixtures within our group. We also assist with the Orange Football Association to provide referees on their summer competitions, which adds another 15 games a week in which we participate. The Orange referees know the fields at Jack Brabham Park well from years of officiating there. There are certain areas of the fields that are known to attract surface water due to their high use, but also the nature of the playing fields. And we believe this surface water could be removed, and drying started hours before it would naturally occur. We were able to go ahead with the Super Sopper. The majority of the time, these areas are around high use areas like the penalty areas and some low lying areas. The football referees, we have the final say on whether games go ahead, and some of the things that we look for in our working guides, surface water. Basically, games should be cancelled if there is any surface water that's more than 2.5 square metres on the field, and so on. Other things that we then take into consideration are player safety. Water sitting on fields in potentially muddy areas can cause illness, and then also the deterioration of the grounds. Water sitting on the fields during periods where there's low grass growth can deteriorate over time if they're used with this surface water still around. The Referees Association believes that there is huge benefits for player safety in removing surface water early in the season and continuing to do so during the season so that grass cover can be maintained effectively. Bathurst Referees Association example where they have a similar side-by-side super stopper that they use regularly on their fields at Proctor Park has shown an example of where they've been able to get games going by using this facility and extracting the surface water from the grounds during weekends where it has been wet leading up to it. We also believe that the equipment, the towing equipment that would be attached to the super stopper could be used for safety roles at that facility, like getting defibs, first aid kits, stretchers to parts of the field a lot more quickly than currently is able to do so. One of the other considerations we'd like to bring to the Council's attention is that Football New South Wales, through their competitions with Sydney teams, regularly book time slots in Western New South Wales and attempt to do that in Orange. Some of the things that they need is because we've got teams travelling from Sydney and long distance, they need confirmation by, say, Friday lunchtime that these games will go ahead. So being able to have equipment that can prepare the fields in such a way where there has been wet weather will allow us to make that confirmation and attract more of these games to Orange, and which has the benefit of a lot of them stay overnight because their games start early in the morning, and therefore use the retail sector and other businesses within Orange. The Orange Football Association has resorted to manual methods of trying to dry these fields. Towels, we've had to lay tarpaulins down over the fields in certain areas to try and restrict the amount of water that appears in these fields. And so there are just some of the benefits that we'd like to bring to Council's attention about the benefits of the super softer and keeping these fields dry as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Our next speaker is Mr. Brett Hazzard on the same topic. Thank you, Mr. Hazzard.
Councillors. My name is Brett Hazzard and I'm the Administrator of the Orange and District Soccer Association, ODFA. I'm here on behalf of the Football Association and our 2,600 players, associated parents and supporters, to speak against the rescission motion to be heard at this meeting and to speak for the previously passed motion. This motion set aside budget funds to purchase a super stopper. Thank you for allowing me time to speak on the issue. If you wish to, my later points refer to a handout that was provided earlier. The ODFA's 2,600 registered players equates to 208 junior teams, 34 senior teams and 5,100 Facebook followers. The ODFA schedules 120 fixtures each week, and in 2023 a massive 2,122 fixtures were scheduled. The ODFA also runs midweek competitions in summer, almost 370 registered players. As you can see, the ODFA has a far reach across the community, and these communities members were excited to hear about the original motion being passed, as it gives their participants the best chance of getting on the fields each week. Football, soccer, is a sport that is played with the ball on the ground. During the majority of play, soccer utilises the field surface for the ball to travel on. The ODFA is very familiar with the fields at Jack Bradman Park, and the majority of the time the goal areas and some other low-lying areas would be the focus for water removal, not the entirety of Jack Bradman Park. Referring to that handout, page talks about the aims of sporting organisations in wet weather. Or also refers to page 2 of the handout, which is a letter from the Bathurst Football Association who use a super stopper on Proctor Park in Bathurst. So page 1 of the handout, it goes through some of the aims of sporting groups. Aim number 1 is to clear surface water to enable drying to start earlier. Currently this is done by volunteers using brooms and towels to remove as much water as possible. See the Bathurst letter on page 2 that I referred to. In the orange highlighted section, they mention We have found that our Super Sopper has been invaluable in enabling us to clear the surface water, which not only allows games to proceed that otherwise may not have, but clearing the surface water assists in the fields drying at a massively quicker rate, which reduces any chance of damage to the fields. Aim number 2 is allowing earlier decisions, again in the Bathurst letter in the blue highlighted section. Additionally, in one case, the use of the Super Sopper would have enabled an entire state carnival to proceed. Had we been able to wait until the Saturday morning and been able to use the Super Sopper, the carnival would have been able to go ahead. Number 3, not letting grounds deteriorate. Again, the Bathurst letter, green highlighted section. More importantly, our members have enjoyed more football and our council have benefited from our fields sustaining less damage. As part of ODFA's experience in the area, in our experience, grounds that are played on in a small amount of surface water churn up very quickly, especially in our goal areas, and the weeks after, only a smaller amount of rain can make these areas of the grounds unplayable. The aim of the Super Sopper would be to allow the fields, especially those goal areas, to retain the grass coverage to stop bare patches and muddy areas after rain events. The second half of page 1 is from the Super Sopper manufacturer, mentioning the benefits of Super Sopper. Please note how they align with the earlier aims I spoke about. Page 3 talks about a case study in the Bathurst Rep Round. Bathurst are attributing the fact that the Rep Round in Bathurst on the 7th of April this year was able to go ahead because of the work done removing the surface water off Proctor Park with the Super Sopper. The case study number 2 talks about our Orange Rep Round. It mentions the economic benefits to Orange businesses with this type of competition, going ahead with 1,800 people coming to town, and how this was almost called off from Friday night rain. These rep days require certainty of venues being available mid-afternoon on the day before the tournament to allow people to travel to the host city. Page 4 of the handout. On Saturday morning, the ODFA was confronted with the surface water, as can be seen in the picture halfway down the page. On inspection 8 hours later, the water had mostly soaked in, but it was still a tight call to go ahead.
Mr Hazzard, that's 5 minutes. Does anyone want an extension? Thanks, Councillor Mileto. Seconded by Councillor Whitten. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Mr Hazzard.
The 8 hours drying time didn't help a large puddle on our under 10 field, which meant we had to set up a temporary field away from the puddle. Now imagine another scenario with a Super Sopper on site. The Super Sopper would have been used to remove the surface water, allowing drying to start much earlier. This would have guaranteed rep football on the Sunday on fields in a much better condition. The puddle on the under 10 field would have been removed by the Super Sopper, and we would not have spent a couple of hours setting up just one temporary field. That time could have been spent making sure all the fields were in a better condition ready for Sunday. Being able to play on the drier fields on the Sunday would not have left the fields in the churned up state that it did. Notice in the text box next to the picture halfway down the page 4, please note these are not muddy areas, but areas that are still relatively solid underfoot with surface water laying on top. These puddles, which mostly soaked in over the day, would not have done so on saturated fields where the water table was too close to the surface. Page 5 of the handout is a letter we received from the Super Sopper manufacturers. It has a couple of points there that I might relate to later. And page 6 is a couple of areas where in Bathurst Facebook posts where they mention the Super Sopper again and have relating to the Super Sopper and the benefits of it. So thank you. Lastly, our summary and conclusions. Football is a sport played on the field surface, and the surface water is the enemy of our games going ahead. Cricket is one of the only other sports who is more surface water adverse. And as it would happen, cricket would also benefit from the Super Sopper. Removing surface water early in the season keeps the ground solid underfoot, which prevents injuries and damage to grass cover. Off grounds with less grass cover become unplayable with smaller amounts of rain. Bathurst Football have years of experience with Super Sopper and currently use a side-by-side to tow a Super Sopper called the Super Walrus. They recommend this type of setup as a side-by-side can be used in important safety roles like getting defibs, first aid kits or stretchers to the side of an incident much more quickly. They also mention removing surface water without damage to the fields, and our council have benefited with our fields sustaining less damage. The letter from Bathurst Football shows the benefits on fields that are on floodplain near the Macquarie River. There was a Bathurst Facebook post from last weekend which stated, "Our Super Walrus Super Sopper removes 300 litres per load and we did 21 empties. That's a massive 6,000 litres of water removed from Proctor Park." The case studies in both Bathurst and Orange show when the Super Sopper was used or could have been used to enable large carnivals to be held in the cities, bringing with them large economic benefits to the cities. But more importantly, they show cases for the citizens of the two cities to play the sport of their choice and have physical and mental health benefits sport provides. Lastly, page 7 of the handout provides a letter of support from Orange Junior Cricket where it states, "The Super Sopper can be used to achieve an interim improvement while the longer-term goal of remediated subsoil drainage of grounds is investigated and implemented." Again, thank you for allowing me time to speak on this motion and speak against the rescission motion and speak for the previously passed motion. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr Hazzard. The council meeting will now resume. There are no mere minutes. Item 3.1, minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Orange City Council held on the 18th of June. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Greenhouse, seconded by Councillor Floyd.
Just got an amendment. This, if I could, please, Mr Mayor.
An amendment?
Yes.
So
Hang on.
So who's seconding the motion? Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Councillor Floyd.
Yeah, just in this particular one, Mr Mayor, the minutes say on page 12 there, with the councillor allowance resolution, it says that I voted for it and Councillor Duffy did not vote for it when it was actually the other way around.
Yeah.
If you just amend that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. It's not an amendment. That's just a...
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yep.
There being no others, Councillor Kinghorn.
Just a matter arising, if I may.
Yep.
We were talking about the budget, and I had a question about the Rainbow Festival drag brunch on the Sunday about the cost. $6,500, which was $81.25 per person. I asked if that included payment to the Queens, and we received an email to say that actually it didn't. They were paid out of the entertainment budget, which means that it was $81.25 a head for that. And I'm just curious about why it was so expensive, because I've looked up the breakfast menu at Groundstone and the dearest item is $28.50, coffees are $5. I'm just wondering how we got to $81.25 per person. And I'm asking because if the Rainbow Festival is going to go again and we're going to have these sort of events and we're raising money to like sponsorships and things to do it, then we have to spend it wisely. So why was it so much?
I'll take that question on notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers? There being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried. I will now... before we start doing planning, I might just do finance very quickly while I'm up here. I'll open the Finance Committee meeting at 7:15 and ask for any... Councillor Duffy?
Councillor Duffy
is
next.
Move second. Yep. Any declarations of interest? Only the ones we've mentioned. I'll do item 2.1, small donations, requests for donations. Can I have a mover and a move by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Floyd. Any speakers? Councillor Kinghorn?
Yeah, I would just like for item number 1, just to amend that to the maximum amount of $2,500 for the Trinity Preschool.
Second the amendment.
Happy to accept that into the...
You have to accept that? You happy to accept that, Councillor Floyd?
Yep, that's fine.
Yep, no worries. So that's gone up now to...
Down.
To 2,500.
To the category maximum.
Any other... I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Item 2.2, which is event sponsorship applications. Can I have a move?
Can I move we deal with them in seriatim, given you've got interests in...
Second that, and I believe there's also a correction that needs to be done.
Hang on. So you'll do seriatim and you'll second that, Councillor McDonald. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
Just advise a correction there.
Yep.
So there's a typo there in the recommendation. It should reflect in item 1 of 2.2. Housing Plus have requested $8,000 for the 2024 White Toe Ball. So the recommendation is to approve that $8,000, not the $10,000 that's been written in. Thank you.
Okay, move that. Can I have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Miletto. Anyone speaking for or against? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Unanimous. Number 2 is the music festival amount of $10,000 to held on the 6th to the 9th March. Moved by Councillor Mallard. Any seconders? Thank you, Councillor Power. Any speakers? There being no speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Number 3, commitment to sponsor the Chamber Music Festival to the amount of 10 for 3 years. Reads a recommendation. I have a mover. Moved by Councillor Mallard, seconded by Councillor Floyd. Any speakers? Councillor Kinghorn.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually am going to vote against this because I don't think it's fair for us to make this decision for the next 3 years. I think it should be left to the new council to decide about that. So I'll be voting against this one.
Any other speakers? Councillor Mallard.
I'll just speak in support of it briefly, Mr Mayor. And I know we've had this discussions around these issues before. I do think giving organisations the certainty that they know going to be funding there, that they can plan for their events without having to come back and put an application in every year when it's an event that's demonstrated it's got the runs on the board and that it provides a great event every year, that, yeah, I'm comfortable with us supporting it. Thanks.
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to make an amendment to it to approve it for 1 year and ask the organiser to come back and provide a report to council with regards to how the event went, feedback, etc., to give the new council a better understanding whether to support it in years 2 and 3.
Second that, Councillor Whitten. Councillor,
I've got a question about the amendment. So is the amendment proposing to be for just passed to the next year? So are you proposing for the following year?
It's for 25 we've funded it for. Is that correct?
Just agreed to fund it for 2025.
That'll be the end of 25 that the report comes back?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
I have any speakers? Councillor Whitten.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'll speak for the amendment. For the simple reason, I agree with Councillor Kinghorn. We are going into a new council next year. I do understand what Councillor Mallard is saying, that organisations like to have a bit of an idea whether they can fund their events. But in saying that, organisations, council has to approve these funds in every budget anyway. So it's even though you're giving security to the event holders, we also need to understand the same for council. Council needs to understand whether it can fund an event every right. So I think it's a good idea that after this event that the organisers, and I'm sure it'll be successful, provide some, because the council again, the next council are going to still have to approve anyway, even if we fund it for the next, it has to be by the budget.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Councillor Kinghorn as well. I just think we shouldn't become complacent with anything being a given in the current economic climate. So I'm happy for a report to come back and it be reviewed by the new council as well.
So you're speaking for the amendment from Councillor Miletto. Any other speakers? Yeah, I'll probably be speaking for the amendment. I think we might open a Pandora's box for all organisations coming for us for long-term funding. So I'm happy to go with the amendment. Any other speakers? Okay, I'll put the amendment first. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The amendment becomes a motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Item 4, Sustainable Living Expo, the amount of $4,000. Moved by Councillor Mallard, seconded by Councillor Peterson. Any speakers? There being no speakers, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. And I will close the Financial Committee at 7:22, and I'll call on Councillor Whitten to conduct the Planning and Development Committee meeting. Thank you, Councillor Whitten.
Jet lag, yeah. Alrighty. You didn't try and save me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to open the Planning and Development Committee meeting for the 9th of July, with the time being it's about 19:24. And we've got, we understand what the declarations of interest are, and I'm sure the acting CEO will remind everyone who they are. And we move on to item 2.1, which are items approved under delegated authority. Do I have a mover?
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Councillor Hamling, seconded by Councillor Greenhalgh. Any discussion on this item? No discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. I'm going to, with the permission of Council, move on to item 2.3 instead of 2.2, because I'll be declaring an interest. So will the Mayor. We're going to move on to item 2.3, which is development application DA for 1 Gartrell Way. Let the record show that Councillor Kinghorn has left the chamber.
Can I just confirm, Councillor McDonnell, that your interest in 2.3 was non-significant, non-pecuniary? Thank you.
All righty. I'm going to move the recommendation for item 2.3, subject, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
I'm going to add that subject to condition 2 being removed from the motion, added to the recommendation and removed from the report. You're going to second that, Mr. Mayor? If you like, I can get the director to explain what item 2 is.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the deletion of condition 2 would be required to demolish the building, so in its entirety, or is it just a restrictive condition, so it's appropriate to remove?
I'm happy with that.
Sorry, can I just clarify? On page 276, we've got the recommendation from the director to delete condition 2, but replace that with a new condition that requires the applicant to provide photographic records of the building. Is that what you're moving, Chair?
Mr. Director.
Good suggestion, yes, well done.
Thank you. All right, you're dead right, Mr. Mallard. Sorry, Councillor Mallard. All right, we all understand? Good, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you for your cooperation. And we'll move on to item 2.2, and the Mayor and I will be leaving the chamber, and I'm going to invite the Deputy Mayor, if he would be so kind as to run this item. Yep. Thank you.
No.
Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 2.2, the development application of number 1 Bathurst Road. May I have a move on that? Thank you, Councillor Mileto. Thank you, Councillor McDonnell. Any speakers on this motion? Could I have Councillor McDonnell, please?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'm happy to support this. I think it's being heard from Mr. Chapman, and knowing what his partner have done with previous businesses. the overwhelming support in the community to have this happen. I do understand Mr. Everett's concerns. However, Hungry Jack's are literally over the road and they're open 17 hours and GYG is open for 15 hours a day. So the operating hours essentially sit right in the middle there. I can't see any reason to refuse this. Great for that area of town particularly.
Thank you, Councillor Malato.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support the motion also. I've had the opportunity to attend the proposed business a couple of years ago and was impressed by the efforts that the applicant went to restore a lot of the heritage there. They have moved with council to meet those commitments with regards to addressing some of the issues which were of concern. One of the things, Mr. Chair, which keeps being to me by people who come to Orange, that is a lack of cafes which are open on weekends, particularly on Sundays. They have trouble finding venues which suit their needs, and I think this cafe is quite unique in some ways. And it is centrally located, and as we know, especially on Sundays, there are a lot of significant sporting events and other significant events which occur in Orange. I think it just adds another venue for people to go and frequent. It is centrally located, like I say, so it's going to appeal to a lot of people. I do take on board Mr. Everett's concerns with regards to Bathurst Road, parking in the cul-de-sac, garbage trucks, things like that, but parking in that area is being taken up as it is anyway. Garbage trucks still work in the area, and not everybody who attends that venue are going to park in the cul-de-sac anyway. Sure, they will be respectful of the people who live there and look for other alternate locations nearby. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Thank you, Councillor Mallard.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to support the approval of this application. I really appreciate the concerns that have been raised through this process, and I know that a lot of the concerns about an earlier iteration have been addressed to a large extent, and I know the staff have given us a report that really explains how a lot of those issues have been addressed. I think adaptive reuse of heritage items is really important. It actually helps to preserve them. Yes, it means that we potentially see a use that isn't normally permitted in the zone, but it's actually really something vital to ensure that we do conserve these sorts of sites and that we actually activate them as well. And I do think this is a good use for this site. I do appreciate the concerns Mr. Everett spoke here, and I know there were concerns raised in written submissions as well. I do think the conditions have addressed some of those. The operating conditions have been cut to 10 p.m. rather than 11 p.m. In terms of lighting, the outdoor seating is only going to operate in the daytime, not in the evening. So I think those things have been addressed. I think matters relating to noise, there's provision for sound monitoring to happen, so there's going to be measurement of those sorts of things. And in terms of things like the parking, I mean, I think, and I've talked about this before, we actually, our traditional conception of car parking needs to change, and we actually need to try to drive behaviour change. So having a venue that doesn't provide a lot of parking, I don't think it's going to be a major problem, but it's actually going to create a situation where people will get used to the fact that, you know, we can walk to a venue and it's not going to be the end of the world. I know this neighbourhood, as I declared, I live close to it. I know not necessarily something I'm that impressed with, but there are a very large number of Airbnb properties around the streets in this area. So I'm sure this is an area that both tourists and locals will make use of a venue like this. So yeah, I'm happy to support it. I think it's a good working through of the challenges of dealing with a heritage site that finds a way to both preserve it and give it a new life while attempting to grapple with all the challenges. Thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Kinghorn, Greenhouse, sorry.
Yeah, look, I'm happy to support the DA as well. I would like to acknowledge the concerns. But yeah, to reiterate Councillor Mallard's point, I think it's really important, the connectivity part of it, where, you know, I think we're going to find exactly what you said. A lot of people are going to walk to this venue, you know, whether it be locals or those in Airbnbs. But I think it's a great use to repurpose that. And it definitely is a problem when we have all these people coming out from the Sydney areas when we don't have cafes and stuff available. You know, this will be very similar, I'm imagining, to Nile Street Cafe and stuff like that, where, you know, we don't sort of have those problems. But I think the multi-use of it is only going to attract lots of different clientele. So, yeah, I think thank you for working with us to come to a happy medium, and happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Greenow. Any other speakers? Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I'll speak in favour of this motion as well. While all of us acknowledge the concerns of the residents nearby, I think this really is going to be a fantastic addition to the neighbourhood. The operators or proposed operators really have a fantastic history with heritage buildings. I attended a wedding just over 12 months ago out at the Old Convent, and it really is a fantastic ground. It still feels like you're in a heritage space, but, you know, we can still use it in the modern day, and I think that's what we're going to see happening here. And I know there's a lot of revered and respected people in the hospitality industry that are really excited to see this go ahead. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Any other speakers? To the other speakers, I just want to quickly touch on it too. I support this this motion. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to create, and especially a church environment where the buildings that were built back in the past was about a gathering, where community came together and being a part of community. I do understand Mr. Everett's concerns in relation to that, but I do see that it's an opportunity that the community can come together and just be a part of it, and seeing the owners' vision and dreams to actually create that environment. So on that note, I'll put the motion to a vote. All in favour, raise your hands. And moved. Thank you very much. Approved. I'll just get...
Yeah, there's.
Okay, sorry. I will now call on the Chair, Councillor Jack Evans, for the infrastructure. Thank you.
People are going to park over there.
We'll get Councillor Kinghorn back yet.
On walkabout.
Sorry.
Infrastructure.
We haven't voted on that. Oh,
Closed itself.
Thank you, Councillor Power. I'll open the Infrastructure Policy Committee meeting for the 9th of July at the time being, what time is it? 7:33. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll have no declarations of interest. Item 2.1 is on page 5 for the City of Orange Traffic Committee meeting. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Miletto. Councillor Peterson seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Peterson.
I just wanted to point one, the point 3.2, the bus stop at the Hotel Canopolis. Just wanted to support it and say the reason why that was moved, or one of them anyway, was the without the guttering there, it actually makes the ramp quite steep. Someone fell off a few months ago coming down a 4-wheel walkway. I sent a photo to you guys of me with the bus people just trying to check out how steep it was. Moving it up the road a bit is good for safety.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Further comment on Traffic Committee report? Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I've just got a matter arising. I've had some people ring me about outside Service New South Wales about some disabled parking. Is there disabled parking outside Service New South Wales at the moment?
There's disabled parking at the rear of in their private car park there at the rear of Service New South Wales.
Yeah, I'm.
And there is one on Kite Street as well, but nothing on Lord's Place. No.
Yeah, just a bit hard. If you're trying to park in a disabled zone, I think it should be out the front of Service New South Wales. Could we just have a look at maybe if we could see that? Because I don't think many people know about the parking around the back.
If I may make a comment, I think it had to do with the height of the gutters. That's why they put it in Kite Street. My recollection. Yeah. Reason why.
And the ramp runs up.
Could you come back?
And the ramp runs up on Kite Street as well.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Further comments? Being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to current works on page 105. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Floyd. Councillor Hamming, second. Discussion on current works. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you. Just regarding the sports precincts, we often receive some commentary about how the on-site works are going. I certainly appreciate the information about turf contracting and the times that's supposed to happen, which I can pass on to interested people. I wondered if we could receive some details, a bit more of a timeline, what might be expected to happen when, so we can share that to interested people.
Happy to. Would you like that as a councillor communication or as an update to the following works report?
Whatever easiest for your staff to do.
I can do both, yeah.
Like a separate timeline might be fantastic there and easier to pull out.
Further discussion on current works?
I just got another matter. I've had some people talk to me about Ophir Car Park. Wondering, have we got lighting in the Ophir Car Park?
To take that on notice.
Can you take that on notice? I've just had some dark. So can we just have a? Can I get a report back about what we might be able to do to install some lighting there?
Yes.
If there's no other comments, I did ask, we took it as a matter arising at the last infrastructure meeting just about the airport hard stand. I was just wondering if there's any update on that question taken on notice.
Yeah, I provided a councillor communication to all councillors in the last week.
I'll have a bit of another look.
I'll flick it onto you directly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's no other comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. I'll hand on to Councillor Greenhouse for Sport and Rec and close the meeting at 7:37. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. With the time being 7:38, I would now like to open the Sport and Recreation Committee meeting. No items or declarations of interest from any councillors. So we'll move on to item 2.1, minutes of the Sport and Recreation Community Committee meetings of the 5th of June. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor McDonald. And seconder, Councillor Floyd. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this item? No discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. We'll move on to item 3.1, establishing a bicycle pump track in Orange. Thank you, Councillor Mileto. Thank you, Councillor Whitten. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Mileto.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank the council staff for the work that they've done on this thus far. Certainly, I was happy to see that they'd engaged with the bike club, but also the locations put forward for us to consider Obviously, it's not a decision point of time. Feedback with regard to the best location, but I think the options are great. They all offer different perspectives, etc. So, and funding opportunities out there. Hopefully, we can access some of those. So, really happy with what's been done so far.
Any other speakers?
Yeah, I'll speak in favour of it. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I see one of the. I know we're not talking about the location, but I like the idea of that Mulder Park, that youth precinct they're talking about. I think, you know, going with the little kids' bicycle track there, and the what's that called? The Rage Cage, and having the skate park. I think you know, we are starting to turn that into a real youth precinct. We're always saying that there's not much for the youth to do. This would be another. I know it's outdoors and it gets a bit cold, but I saw kids down at the skate park today still riding around. So I think this is just another, that'll be another attraction for that area. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Peterson?
Yeah, no, obviously speaker in support of it, particularly useful for children and those learning to ride. I wanted to say that a pump track does exist already at the mountain bike park at Lake Canobolas. Quite small, requires a lot of maintenance, and that's hard to provide for the club. Given the experience of the BMX track that had to be knocked down because of the lack of maintenance, I would hope that any pump track design considers maintenance and tries to minimise it as much as possible, just for the trail's longevity.
Thank you. No other speakers. I'm going to talk absolutely for this motion. It's been something that has been brought to my attention on a number of occasions. That younger sort of age demographic, the skate park can be a bit dangerous for those at times with some of the bigger kids there. I love the idea of the locations as well, and totally agree with the Mayor's comment down near the Bob Russell Sports Precinct there for the cage. I think is a great venue for that, and the vision, like down there, it is becoming a real little precinct, and you'd like to see that, you know, during the summer months and something, you know, that sort of time period that, you know, we might see a coffee van and things down there. Again, that connectivity where we can get people walking to those sort of things on a Sunday, and that being a real destination. So yeah, thank you to the council staff for the work they've done. I have witnessed a couple of these. I've looked at them at a couple of different locations in Sydney, also out at Wyangla Dam. They have a modular one there, so it requires very little maintenance. But yeah, well done to the staff, and happy to support the motion. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the Sport and Recreation Policy Committee meeting at 7:43. I'd now like to call on Councillor Mallard to conduct the Environmental Sustainability Policy.
Thanks, Councillor Greenhalgh. I'll open the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee meeting on the 9th of July 2024 with the time being 7:43pm. Item 1.1, we haven't had any conflicts of interest declared. There being none now, I will move on to item 2.1, minutes of the Environmental Sustainability Community Committee meeting of the 7th of June. There's a recommendation on page 5. Thank you, Councillor McDonald and Councillor Power. Any discussion on this item? There being none, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Anyone against? Councillor Floyd? Motion's carried. Okay, item 3.1, the emissions reduction plan. There is a recommendation on page 33.
Happy to move that, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councillor McDonald. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Miletto. Any discussion on this item? Okay, if there's no other discussion, I just want to Thank the staff. I know we've got Eli and Cynthia from Council's Sustainability team here with us, and a lot of work that's gone into this. It's been discussed through the Environmental Sustainability Community Committee. We can see on page 34 the impact already of the 100% renewable energy power purchase agreement, what that's driving down in terms of our emissions, and we can also see the massive challenge to come. It's a problem that's bigger than just our council. It's a major issue for us as a society, is the amount of emissions from landfill waste that we're still going to need to work on in particular. But I think it's really important that we're taking this first step. I know we're taking it in line with the state government targets, which is a really important starting point. I did note last year when I went to the Cities Power Partnership Summit that Emeritus Professor David Carrolley made the point that because we as a society and a planet haven't moved fast enough, net zero by 2050 isn't really the target anymore. We actually, because we keep emitting, we need to reduce total emissions and hit an earlier target. But I think that's going to continue to develop as governments of all levels try to ramp up climate action over the rest of this decade and beyond. There being no other discussion, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Anyone against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the Environmental Sustainability Policy Committee meeting. With the time being 7:45 p.m, I'll call on Councillor McDonald to conduct the Services Policy Committee.
Mallard, I'll open up the Services Policy Committee meeting with the time being 7:46. Any declarations of interest? Alrighty, item 2.1 is minutes of the Cultural Heritage Community Committee meeting. I'm aware that there's some corrections that need to be done to this. Councillor Power, did you have, I believe the attendance is completely wrong.
Move it.
Yep. Did you want to move it with the corrections?
Move it, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd just like to make amendments to the minutes of the 17th of June. I had noted that the attendees, there's one omission, which is Greg Ingram in attendance. And unfortunately, Auntie Alice Williams was not in attendance at that meeting. So just a correction there, if you don't mind.
Were they the only two corrections? I thought there were some more.
Jordan, more, sorry.
I think there are some more, sorry. I'm not sure what happened with this list, but my recollection of the meeting, Councillor Whitten wasn't in attendance. Auntie Alice Williams, as the Deputy Mayor said. Mr. William Tuck has actually resigned from the committee, but is listed as attending. Jordan Moore didn't attend. And the Manager Development Assessments Senior Planner, I'm not even sure who that is, but the only staff were the Director and the Museum and Heritage Coordinator. I'm a little confused about that one. And also, in addition to Greg Ingram, Gillian Ingram attended as an observer, Mrs. Gillian Ingram, and Mr. Reg Kidd attended via Teams.
Can we take that on notice? Thank you, Janessa. All right, any other discussion or corrections? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Alrighty, item 3.1 is our draft greening orange urban forest strategy. Recommendation is on page 31, and I would love to be the mover of this one if I can have a seconder, please.
I'll
Thank
second
you,
that.
Councillor Mallard. Is there any discussion on this?
Just a business arising. Very happy to support the recommendations. Quite a general report. I just wondered if it might be an opportunity to update the community regarding sort of concerns about the impact of trees on Anson Street and elsewhere through impacting the infrastructure. We had a briefing on that about a year ago, and I haven't really heard since then. And I thought as part of the strategy, that could be part about how we manage, greening the city and making it a nice place to walk around, but also dealing with the impact it might have on the infrastructure nearby.
Do you want to comment, Acting Director?
Or did we want to do it in closed if it's... I think it was a confidential
brief, so we might do that in closed. Thank you. We'll take that on notice for now. Yeah, we'll do it in closed.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, yeah. Happy to see this go out on exhibition. Want to thank the staff and the consultants who have worked on it, as well as all of the community members who've engaged with it, particularly through the Parks, Trees and Waterways Community Committee. It's been really good working through the process of seeing this report come through. Obviously, our canopy cover and our vegetation is really important to the city in a number of ways. It's the character of the city. It's itself, and making sure as we grow as a city that we look after that. It's important in providing amenity for people. It's important for providing habitat for native wildlife as well, and promoting biodiversity and connectivity. So it's really great that we've got targets and plans for how we can try to go forward in making sure that we're looking after and we're continuing to improve the coverage of our urban forest. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mallard. Any other discussion? All right, before I put the motion, I will just also like to say a big thank you to staff. This has been quite a long consulting process with both the consultants that have done the strategy, but also with the community committees, especially the Environmental Sustainability Community Committee and the Parks, Trees and Waterways. So this has been some time in the works, and I'd just like to thank staff for that. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Excellent, unanimous. That concludes the Services Policy Committee at 7:51. I'll hand back to the Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. We will move on resume the council meeting. We'll move on the notices of motion. 4.1, Councillor Kinghorn, you'd like to move that? Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Kinghorn.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks to the guys who came to speak about this. I just want to reinforce that this is not about not trying to improve the playing conditions at Brabham and Sturgeon Oval. We all want that. It's just the potential issue of purchasing something that may not work in this particular location. I thank you for the... And I read that while I was banished from the room in the planning committee. A couple of comments on it. I accept that it's effective at Proctor Park. It looks like it works well. I do note on page 2 of this information that it was the bigger unit was paid for by the Bathurst District Football Association rather than by council. And on page 5, which is the bit from the actual Super Sopper people, I note that they say they don't have any specific data to support the local conditions here. So I'll just point that out. I also note that in Bathurst, it might be effective at Proctor Park, but at Bulldogs and Paddy's football fields on Hereford Street, they're currently undergoing work to improve the subsoil drainage. And I imagine that if a Super Sopper would work on those sites, that would be considerably cheaper than the work that's being done by Bathurst Council in these locations. So that just reinforces that they don't work everywhere. And I just don't want to put aside this much money for something that may not be effective. So that's why in rescinding the resolution, I would like to propose that we do conduct some research into how this problem can be solved, because we do want it solved. And maybe that would be that in certain places in the in these locations that something like that might work just for certain areas, but it's just a lot of money for something that may not work. And if we get it out there and you soak up water and get rid of a lot of it, and then it just lifts up from underneath again because the ground's waterlogged, then it seems a shame to have wasted that money that might go towards a permanent solution. So that's what this is all about. They're trying to fix the challenges is absolutely commendable, and I do support that, but just not this way.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'll also support this motion and echo Councillor Kinghorn's comments. I do appreciate that this is something that needs to be addressed, but as we all know, the budget is incredibly tight. And staff report here saying that, yes, there's a few benefits to it, but not ideal for Brabham or Sturgeon. Have to only be operated by council staff, which means that you have to be paying staff or adding staff to cover it on the weekends. Far better. $5,000 to a machine that may not actually be of any assistance.
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'd like to make an amendment to the motion. Your rescission motion?
Hang on.
Okay, so can I make a matter arising? Sorry.
Yeah, go on.
All right, I'll speak against the rescission motion. Mr Mayor, no, I wasn't sure whether I could do a matter arising.
Yeah, we'll do it after.
Okay.
It's a matter of arising. Yes.
Arising, yeah.
Thank you. We often talk about being a progressive council, and here we are discussing the hundreds of thousands of dollars which could be spent over in the next 5 to 10 years down the track, with no guarantee that any funding will be ever made available to improve the playing surfaces. No guarantee whatsoever. All subject these improvements to grant funding. We're also going to seek funding to improve the playing surfaces at Brendan Sturgeon Oval, Wade Park or Rowena Oval, where a super sopper may also be utilised. We'd like to think that our attitude will be on how we can make this happen, not why we can't do it. Yet in the meantime, we expect our volunteers to use brooms and towels to soak up excess water from the playing surface in an attempt to make playing conditions safe for our participants. When covers are removed from cricket pitches, water runs off to the side. Surface water needs to be removed from areas around the wicket and could easily be addressed by using a super sopper. There is no suggestion that this is the only super sopper that is available. And as indicated in the Bathurst report, the Super Walrus is a different type of super sopper which will be ideal for the playing conditions at Jack Brabham Park, Brendan Sturgeon, Wade Park and Rowena Oval to remove excess water. And that's what this is, it's surface water. These grounds aren't waterlogged. It's surface water which runs from different areas. And as the speakers spoke about, within a few hours, we can remove that. We have timelines to do certain things. Sport is part of the fabric of our community, and we need to add assurance to these people that we can provide safe fields for them to play their sports on. As the speakers indicated, a lot of the teams which come to Orange to play, whether it's soccer, cricket, rugby league, they need assurance that when they get here that those fields are going to be available. With regards to removing water from cricket pitches, as councillors would know, when there's a tarp put over the cricket pitch and the water runs off, it runs to the side. And as it stands at the moment, those cricketers have to sit in the grandstand or on the sideline watching, hoping that the water's going to either sink in or evaporate or do something. Here we are, we've got the opportunity to provide assurance to these different sports that there is an option out there available, whilst it's not the one which was originally suggested in the council report, which was a motorised one which you sit on. That can be substituted with the Super Walrus, which is a side-by-side machine. machine does not require council staff to operate. I acknowledge council's comment regarding council staff only being permitted to operate the original machine. This new machine doesn't require that to occur. And with regards to the Bathurst Football Association, there are no restrictions put on them by Bathurst City Council to operate that machine on council-owned grounds. The financial impact, there was a comment made by staff that there'd be a financial impact to the budget. If the other version was to be accepted by councillors, that being the Super Walrus, council staff wouldn't be required to go out there on weekends, whether it's to Jack Brabham Park or Wade Park, Brendan Sturgeon or Arena Over, where this machine would be used. So I'm speaking in support of the original motion and against the rescission motion. Thank you.
Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me there's a bit of conflicting information going on. So we got one paper saying, hey, this is not going to work, the soil's not right, but another bit saying it'll work fine. I don't know that there would ever be a situation where we've offered to buy a new bit of gear for some of our staff and they've said, hey, that's not going to work. Surely they'd go, sick, let's jump on that, that'll work beautifully. I would think probably the best thing to do, if we vote for this rescission motion, that money is unallocated. It's not going to get spent elsewhere. If Mr. Chris Ho, Mr. Sales at Super Supper Man wants to sell us a Super Supper, I reckon probably the best course of action is to have him out here, have a look at the soils, see if this is actually going to work across the town, and then we might have an asset worth investing in. I think we've got too much conflicting information to really make a proper informed decision here. Thank you.
Any other Councillor Greenhalgh?
Yeah, so I supported this original motion, and when I heard about the rescission motion, I totally agreed that we needed to do our homework first. Like to see it deferred so we can get a little bit more information. I fully support getting kids on the ground. We need to get kids on the ground. We had the example of the under-13s rugby that was almost called off. Our junior carnival was called off. You know, as Councillor Miletto said, you know, we had it in Port Macquarie recently where people had travelled from Western Australia and spent thousands of dollars to bring their kids over and they weren't going to be able to play on the surfaces. So I think if we invest in the right machine and we do our homework, it's going to be an absolute asset economically to our community, but for our kids, so they get value for money for their fees for playing sport. That's what it's all about. We are a winter sport, but also for the cricket. We are big in cricket and representative cricket, so if we can utilise it for that as well, I think it's great. The fact that council staff wouldn't have to use this one, I think is great. So, yeah, I'm going to speak against the rescission motion and for the original motion.
Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The guy speaking against the rescission, for the simple fact is that Super Supper, anyone who's played sport in winter time on the grounds, drying the field, making it safe, aquaplaning, which that was about the only way I ever scored a try, because when I got tackled I just kept sliding, right? Aquaplaning is what's dangerous, and that is the water that is pooling on the ground and sitting there. Once the game starts and it rains again, well, the water is going to get there, and it's up to the officials to say whether they stop the game and they. But I think the fact of the matter is that Orange has now become renowned for its football and its rugby league and its rugby union, about making those grounds available, worse for young people and people travelling here, not having certainty that they're going to be playing. And they love to play in any conditions. So if I learned to swim at Jack Brabham, not how to play football or soccer, water. So it's really a safety factor. It's about, put it this way, think about how much we save as a community by not having to repair the grounds because of So, again, I'm no expert in what type of machine we're going to get. I imagine that will be looked at. We're reserving the 35K to get a device. It's all about duty of care and safety. I think we've heard from some of the experts tonight who play or referee or oversee the game. And so I'm going to be...
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going to be speaking for the rescission motion. Now, the reason why I'm going to speak for the rescission motion is that you've got a machine, but you've got to have the right environment. What I'm seeing, and I'm not an expert, as what I'm hearing now from other people, but you've got to have the right ground. And with our new sports precinct, you look at the layers of sand, you look at the thing, we can have a dump of water, rain on there, and that's where it'll just run off. So at least then we've got something that can be utilised on that if it gets too much. But to go onto something that is probably a clay base and then topsoil on top of that, that's not going to run away, I think we may be just putting the cart before the horse. And I think we need to look at the subsoil in our sporting fields before we start proceeding to go down and buy this big machine, because I think it's just not logical sense as what I'm thinking. Now I'm going to go back on that. There, I take the aspects of the guest speakers in relation to sporting thing. I'm a sporting crazy person too. I've played sports and most of those fields we're talking about here. At the end of the day, we need to have the fields to create that machine to do the right job. Otherwise, what the heck? It's not going to work, as what the report says there. And if the start, and I take Councillor Evans on that there, what he said, if the very staff that work these fields say, guys, we need to do something else, and they're talking about the subsoil, that's where we need to go first. That's where we need to go first. And on that note, sir, I yield back.
Councillor Mallard.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I mean, I think the fundamental issue we've had here is that this came up on the night of the adoption of the budget, and that sort of ad hoc proposal is really not the way our budget process is set up to deal with. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't want to see our fields safer, more playable, in better nick all the time. There's no disagreement on that. I couldn't support this on the night we adopted the budget, and I'm going to support the rescission motion now because I had these concerns. It was something none of us in the room had our head around it. We've been presented with a load more information since, which is now conflicting, as Councillor Evans noted. We could we've made an allocation of money for a particular purpose, and we don't know whether it's going to do the job or whether it's going to be money that we could have used to actually achieve something towards the outcome that we all want. We've got a great first step with the fact that the new fields are going to have the drainage work done that's just about to get underway. If we can look at what we need to do as a plan, but really this ideally needed to come with some sort of proposal for investigation before coming with a suggestion that we just throw the money at this idea without knowing whether it's going to work. Thanks.
Councillor Floyd.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, as a soccer, rugby and cricket player with probably 40, 45 years experience, I'm all for getting out onto the sporting fields and having a go. And look, I am, even though I'm speaking for the rescission motion, I'm against I'm for these pieces of equipment. But I just would like to see a bit more research put into it first. I'd like to see it, maybe put into next year's budget or a future budget to definitely buy this equipment to help us out, because I can see the need for it. Playing many, many years, mainly in the Bathurst area, I certainly know all about what goes on with with the soils there, and of course around the regions when I've been away to carnivals and that playing over many years. So I understand exactly where this is coming from, and I do like the idea of it, but I would just like to see that little bit of research put in before I can within myself justify spending the money on it. But certainly at the end of the day, I would like to see this happen. I would just like to see a bit more research and then budget for this in the future.
Any other speakers? I'll be speaking. I'll be speaking against the notice of rescission. I think anything we can get that's going to take that subsurface off the water, the water off the ground, so we can make an early call on whether we can play or not, is going to be advantageous for sport. I think the super sop around the cricket pitches, I think the super soppers work. I've seen them work all over the place. We're talking about doing the subsoil out of Jack Brabham. That's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we can apply for grants and all that sort of thing, but it'll take a long time. And I think if we can just do something first so we can get the kids onto the fields to play by taking that subsurface water off, I think we could, and as I said, it's not just for Jack Brabham, it can be moved around to other parks. So I'm happy to support this. I'll go against the rescission motion. Councillor Kinghorn, you want to close the debate?
Yeah, thank you. I get that, and I think ultimately we actually all want the same thing, but and I get what Councillor Witten's saying about safety and everyone else about just trying to get the water away. What I want is to ascertain that it will be effective before we do that. That's what this was about. I think we do want it to be right. I suspect there'll be a matter arising where we research it and maybe get something else. And I'm also curious to know what the price of the super walrus compared to the amount that was put aside in the budget. So we want things to be right. I get it takes a long time to do the subsoil drainage to get that resolved, and maybe one of these in some of those areas might be okay, although I suspect if we're talking about doing it for cricket, then we might need more than one, so then that becomes expensive as well. It also says on here that there's a 12-month lead time anyway, so it's not something that would be quick even with this. So let's do some research and see what we can come up with to try and fix the problem.
Okie dokie. I'll put the rescission motion. All those in favour? Against? Rescission motion's carried. I'll move on to item 4.2, notice of motion biodiversity credits. I'll move that. I'll second it by Councillor Power. Any speakers? Councillor Power? Councillor Power?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this up. As what you mentioned before, the putting and allocating this percentage of funds out there. So I think it's a great cause. I think it's a great opportunity to give back. And so, yeah, I just support this here motion. So thank you.
Councillor Mallard.
Question first, Mr. Mayor. Item 2 of the motion is saying that council determine available options for the allocation. What are you proposing?
I was going to move an amendment that we move. I might deal with these in seriatim only because I wouldn't mind moving recommendation 2 for council staff to have a bit of a workshop and see where that money goes, because we've had a few problems with food care and all that, but I think we can defer that consideration of that recommendation. Is that okay? So I'll recommend. Why are you looking like that, Councillor McDonald?
I'm just a process. I'm just really confused now.
You're really confused. Okay, so.
Well, because you moved it, you had a second, and now you're trying to amend it, but you.
Oh, well, you could ask the question rather than looking like that. But that motion one that we allocate 75% to, it's pretty self-explanatory. And number 2, that the 25% go to charities. But we've contacted a few charities, as it says in the staff comment, we haven't had any luck with those charities. So what I'm saying is, if the seconder wouldn't mind, that I defer number 2 till we have a workshop and get some proper charities back.
I support that. And why I support that is that if we can get some clarity around where those funds could go and allocated to, as what you mentioned, Mr. Mayor. So,
Yep. Yeah, the same as that community. Can you want to speak on that, Mr. CEO?
If I understand you correctly, so I'll just clarify what I'm thinking in my own head, is that the workshop would determine then how that money is spent, not necessarily having to come back for another council resolution.
No.
Is that your intent?
Yep.
Yep. That's doable.
Okay. I'll do... So you're happy with that to go in, my second? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Want to speak?
Yeah.
Didn't you already speak?
Asked a question.
Rightos. Okay, settle down.
I'm not unsettled.
Yeah, good on you. Yep. What's your question? You want to speak for the motion or against?
Yes, so just wanted to speak on the motion and say I think this is really good that we're taking funds from what we've already delivered in terms of environmental benefit by creating biodiversity offset credits, and that we're now going to put that into more sustainability projects. That was something I've pitched in the past, that a revolving fund like that is a way that we can, instead of just doing a bit of good and having it disappear absorbed into the budget, that we can use the savings that we make and we can continue doing more good. I really want to commend the work of the sustainability staff with council. Again, I know they're here in the room, that they've done on this area and looking at what we could do in terms of good work with this. So yeah, I know they've put a lot of work into this and into the workshop that we've had. I think it's fantastic. That we're going to be seeing council doing even more, which will end up saving council money as well as doing environmental benefit. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. I'll move on to item 4.3, which is notice of motion Summer Street Christmas shopping event. Moved by Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Greenhalgh. Any speakers?
I'll speak up, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Evans.
I'd like to thank the speakers for taking the time out of their businesses to come through this evening. What we're asking of council is really very simple. I note there's no financial implications at this stage. What we're not proposing is an absolute rager of a street party that I believe used to happen back in the day, where some questionable things might have happened. What we're asking to do is to bring council to the table to assist with setting up a good environment for retail shopping to open the Christmas period. There are different organisations, be it shopping centres or independent businesses, that do events, to bring everybody to the table and see how we can sort of weave all those together and make them better. I think the business community really welcome that. As you've heard this evening, last year and for the last couple of years, independent retailers have had a crack at doing it themselves. Most recently, the Shop and Sip event that was really well received up the main street. There are limitations then with, if I put a specials rack out on the footpath, but I've got a glass of wine, I can't really go and have a look at it without getting a slap on the wrist. So to have council at the table to guide businesses or the organisations leading the discussion through those challenges, I think is going to be really beneficial. But again, really simple what we're asking. Looking forward to start the discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Greenhalgh.
I'm really happy to support this motion, and I thank Councillor Evans for bringing it before us. I think anything we can do around the Christmas period to bring our community together, I envisage, Christmas carols down the street, the work that we've done with the Christmas tree and stuff like that. We could even combine, the official turning on of the Christmas tree. I think this has really good legs to be something that our community can own and embrace, and happy to support the motion.
Councillor Whitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. Thank you for bringing this motion, Councillor Evans. Many years ago when I was the president, we did have the Chavs Chamber. We used to have the event was from Peasley Street all the way to Sale Street. It got stopped because of the events that were happening after hours with bands behind the Civic Centre here. But certainly from a retail point of view, it was a roaring success, and it used to be very family friendly. There were 2 events we would have. One was in the spring where we had the retailers were allowed to put all of their produce out onto the footpath. Attracted a lot of people to the CBD. Certainly and that's the whole idea, about attracting people to the CBD. And they were the days before we had an entire northern distributor. We would still close the entire main street, between Dale Street, and they were very successful. And sure, because of a small minority who would play up, it caused council to stop it. I think, certainly the workshop will idea to.
Councillor Miletto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And whilst I support the notice of motion, I do have a couple of concerns, and that is regards to forming a working party and group and being able to facilitate this in the time period provided. And the reason I say that is because closing Summer Street will have its complications because it's a state road. And being a state road, RMS will have carriage of whether that occurs or not. The problem that we have is that Orange Traffic Committee had their last meeting today or this morning. They're not holding another one until the new council term. So any decision which will need a proper report to go back to the RMS to do that. So I'm just wondering whether enough notice for this to occur. That's the maybe I can call on the director to provide an opinion on that, because I know for a fact that there are no more meetings. So unless it's done under delegated authority, which it can't because it's a state road and an RMS issue. Thank you.
We'll ask for clarification.
The Traffic Committee is a statutory committee. It's had its last meeting for this council, but as soon as we have an elected council, we can then determine that. We don't have to wait for the community committees to be established as such, and we can, because it is a statutory committee, it's ongoing. If it was so determined tonight, we could even do a we've done it for emergent issues in the past where we've done an online meeting, electronic meeting. Yeah, it could be done during this term of council.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jack Evans, for bringing this up. I'm going to support the motion because the wording is very simple. Formulate a working party with the local businesses. So it's about just coming together, talking about, we're not closing down, there's nothing set in concrete yet. It's about making sure that the working party worked with council. Tonight, I think this motion here is simply saying that create a working party and see where the decision goes. They will still need to come back to council to close down streets, etc., but that working party is there to a think tank to brainstorm with the local businesses, for the local businesses, and see what comes out from there. So thank you, Councillor Evans. I support this motion.
Councillor Floyd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as we all know, small business drives our economy, and we're sitting here tonight to be the drivers of that. So I'm 100% behind this. Anything we can do to help our small businesses, we should be doing it, and 100% behind it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Also happy to support this. I quite like the idea of, I've written down here about the possibility of combining it with the Carols by Candlelight. Everyone's out and about anyway. I do have a question about the opening hours. I know that when we extended our pharmacy, we had to get approval, gave us particular hours that we were allowed to open. You can just listen, please, Mr. Greenham. And I spoke to you at one point about extending those hours because of COVID. We were open longer to do vaccinations because we had to get permission, and you said there was a special override because of COVID. But I'm just wondering about if businesses are opening at hours where they wouldn't normally open, and their condition of the consent for their businesses to be there contains particular opening hours. Is that an issue, or is that just automatically dealt with by an approval by council?
I'll ask the director to answer that question. I was trying to get his attention. I was listening to you. Director Mark Hodges will give a response.
Mr. CEO, in relation to hours of operation, many of the times it's in the development consent applicable to the what did happen during COVID is they did pass specific legislation. I'll have to take on notice because I thought it had expired. There's parts that did and parts that didn't. I thought the hours of operation had gone. I'll just take that on notice and I'll send out a council communication.
I'm only mentioning the COVID part of it because overrode what normally happens, and I assume we're back to what normally happens, and that's what I'm wondering about, what normally happens if somebody wants to open later.
Some businesses have hours, the older ones don't.
Okay.
There's always a mixture through the city.
Okay, no, I was just curious. Thank you.
Any other speakers? You want to close the debate? Thanks, Councillor Evans.
Yeah, thank you, councillors, for your support and to answer any queries regarding time frame. I'd say this, I think now is probably the right time to do it. Previously, when this has been tried to organise or smaller events organised, we sort of start around mid-November and it doesn't really end us up with enough time. So I'd say really, if not now, then. And look, totally understand concerns around road closures and whatnot. And I think the openness of a working party, if there are members of traffic committees and whatnot that wanted to be part of the discussion, I'm sure they'd be welcome to attend, as would any councillors or anyone involved in economic development committees or whatever. I think it's a really open discussion that could benefit everybody.
Thanks, Councillor Evans. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Unanimous. Thanks. We'll move on to general reports. 5.1, caretaker period delegations to Chief Executive Officer on the 7th of August. Can I have a move?
Me to move.
By Councillor Floyd, seconded by Councillor McDonald. Any speakers? Councillor Kinghorn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question. So when I was reading all the stuff with this, I'm curious as to what usually happens, because this is a longer time than last time, because the election was at the beginning of December and I think it was only the rest of December, although I suppose we would have been in caretaker in November. It says that all the councillor positions become vacant in the middle of August, except the mayor. So does the CEO still liaise with the mayor during this period?
Absolutely. Just as we do with the, we generally have the CEO gets interim delegations for planning and development and certain items over the Christmas shutdown period. And in those circumstances, he still liaises with the mayor.
Is it much different to what normally happens under delegation, usually? No. Okay, thank you.
Speakers? Councillor Whitten.
Our last council meeting?
5th of August. 6th of August, thank you.
Why are we shutting council down early? Why we normally go right up until the election? We've never shut council down a month before an election. We have meetings right up until the last.
I believe it's quite common to have a caretaker mode 1 month beforehand.
Caretaker mode, but I think he's talking about the meetings.
Yeah, I'm talking about council meetings. Caretaker mode means that we can't make fiscal decisions. We cannot make a decision on behalf of the next council which obligates them financially. We can make policy decisions and make other decisions. Right up until last Tuesday before an election. We are officially councillors until such time as you after the election. Mayor confused about why we're not having meetings right up until September.
I had the same question because I think usually in years gone by we have gone up to that. We've gone up to the election. I don't know why we're not going to have any more meetings after the.
Have caretaker mode, as I've said, can't fiscally make budget decisions. Or money that hasn't been allocated already. I'm not quite sure.
I'll take that one on notice if I may.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
So basically, we still go into caretaker mode and the information, but so what happens if we can still have meetings up till, where does that sit with this?
I might move an amendment to make the process better.
Yep. You got a second? Yeah. Any speakers? There being no speakers, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? The amendment becomes the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. I'll move on to 5.1, which is strategic policy review, Redmond Place Precinct.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Mallard. Seconded by Councillor Whitten. Councillor Mallard.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to the staff for the work on this. Obviously, it's an important step adopting this policy and the work we're doing with Redmond Place. I did want to acknowledge the submission that was made by Shelter New South Wales, that while it raised issues that haven't been considered relevant to incorporate changes into this policy, but they're pointing to a lot of the issues that we still need to deal with in our broader housing policy and in some key areas. Particularly things like the definition of affordable housing. I've talked about this in a previous meeting, I think, a while ago, and Kayla Clancy, who works for Shelter New South Wales, is the person who'd identified it, that in fact the ministerial guidelines don't match up with the legislation about how they define affordable housing. And I think that's something that maybe if I'm given the opportunity at putting a motion up for another local government New South Wales conference at some point, I might put something up on that. And I did want to note that while there are comments like on page 34 that the strategic policy doesn't exclude public or social housing from being provided within the Redmond Place precinct, I think it's clear this project, while it's going to do some good, it's going to have 20 to 30% designated affordable housing in it. It's going to be delivering new housing supply as well on top of that. There's no plan for social housing within this project, and it's not going to magically materialise. If we don't make it happen, if we don't build it into the plans, it doesn't happen. I hope we'll see some progress on some other social housing coming out of an item that we're going to discuss in closed. But yeah, I think the work that's been put into Shelter's submission points to a lot of the areas we still need to be thinking about, both in terms of how we approach our own future projects, but also particularly how we get the private developers contributing with things like affordable housing schemes as well. Thanks.
Any other speakers? I just want to speak. I want to. This is a great move forward. I think it takes a while. We announced this a couple of years ago, and it's we're getting to the adoptions. It's a long time, but we are setting something in stone, and we're setting something in motion. It just frustrates me how long these sort of things take. To move through the bureaucracy, the planning, and all that sort of thing. So I know I've spoken to other mayors from regional cities. They're quite interested on some of how we're working with Landcom on this project. So I think we have had a lot of positive reactions to this, and a lot of people want to see how we're doing it so they can emulate it. So this is going to be great, and the sooner it gets done, the better, really. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Item 5.3, which is New Year's Eve options. Can I have a move by Councillor Power, seconded by Councillor Peterson? Any speakers? Councillor Floyd.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of option 1 here for Lake Canobolas. As everyone knows, I'm a big fan of the fireworks coming back for New Year's, and certainly while I'm looking forward to them, I'm also looking forward to the fact that this is, as Council has told us, is a flagship event, which means it's unlike any other around this whole area, which kudos for the staff and everyone that have put the work in on this. They've done an absolutely brilliant job getting this to the point where it is now. We had a really good session there, councillor meeting there a week or two ago about this, and a lot of the uncertainty, I think, was clarified with a lot of us around certain things. So I'm certainly all for this. I think the safety aspects are met out there, and certainly while I'm not against Waratahs, I just personally believe that I think a term bang for our buck is best served by sending this out to Lake Canobolas. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other speakers? Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, thank you. And I speak in favour of the recommendation and the recommended option 1. Support the recommendation, have an event that's genuinely quite exciting and different from what other centres have to offer. I think I should acknowledge the financial costs, and there's some risk involved with it. I think it's on balance a risk worth taking. The photos of fireworks over the lake in front of market stalls and the mountain in the background alone would be worth the expense for the marketing advertising that would come from it, and support it.
Councillor Whitten.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be speaking against the motion for the fact, look, I do recognise that the lake is a flagship and it would be a beautiful location for it. But the New Year's Eve event is a family-friendly event. It basically restricts those family units who aren't able to get to the lake. Now, I know we've got buses going out there, but not all, it's a fact, not all family units are united, and it would be difficult for some young people to be able to transit their way out to the lake. So me personally, I'm about having events in Orange that are balanced and have equity across social aspects of having it in town. Orange. Have to travel there. So a number of people have approached me for the simple fact is that they would normally walk, ride, not drive they would make it a family event to go to, say, somewhere like us. But having it out the lake whilst flag shipping to all of the people who are going to travel to Orange who don't live here, pay rates here. I get that because we're attracting tourists and economy. This is a family-friendly event, belongs to residents of Orange. That's why I'm speaking against it.
Thank you. Councillor Kinghorn.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am supporting this, and I don't think you can get a much more family-friendly place than Lake Canobolas. And as long as the transport, the buses are done well and taking into account Councillor Whitten's concerns, people can walk or ride to a pickup point for the bus. The only question I have was when we had the briefing, they were talking about the possibility of either discharging on the other side of the lake or from a pontoon on the lake, and the range of area where the embers fall was all over the water except for a tiny bit when it was discharged from a pontoon on the lake. This doesn't really, it just says discharging over a lake. It doesn't really specify which location the fireworks would be launched from, and it was quite a difference in dry land area that was in the fall zone, or them being discharged on the other side of the lake. So I'm just interested in which option is actually being assumed here.
I'll ask Mr. Redmond to answer that, Acting Corporate and Commercial Services Director. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It was yet, but the actual specific site's yet to be determined. Some of the risks we're looking at, the risk is lessened by over the water, and just the logistics of doing that. We're quite nailed yet.
I would just like to know before I vote on this, so that's why I'm asking.
So we can't answer anymore. So when will we know when, where, how, why?
Really, Mr. Mayor, we're waiting for this resolution to pick a site, do some more detail around the design of the event. If there's a particular view that that you want the safest option, and that being over the water, then we can design the event to do it over the water.
So do I do an amendment to put that in? There was just quite a significant difference to the discharge, the timber drop zone.
We might just check if the mover and seconder are happy to include that.
Yep. Who was seconder? You're happy with that, Councillor Peterson? Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Councillor McDonald?
Just a question on that, through you probably to the director or acting director. There was also in that briefing a slight price difference in whether it was launched from a pontoon or whether it was from the lake's edge. Has that been sort of allowed for in the budget for the event?
Correct, yes. So we
Thank you.
we can manage that.
Councillor Mallard?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think Lake Canobolas is a great venue. I want to thank the staff for really talking us through their thinking in the approach to the event and the way they see it, the potential to develop it. And I'm very keen for us to explore having this sort of event and looking at whether it can become a real flagship annual institution. So I think all of that's great, and that's why I think Lake Canobolas is the right venue, and happy to go with that recommendation. I will, I think my objection to the fireworks has been on record. I'm mindful we've been going a couple of hours already. I won't go through the process of moving an amendment again tonight that's going to get defeated again. I don't think I have the support on that, but I do still have the concerns. Councillor Kinghorn's questions wouldn't be relevant if we, instead of firing metal and gunpowder up into the air and having it rain down potentially on people, if we instead went with some alternative form of entertainment like a laser show, never mind the impact on domestic animals, livestock, native wildlife, the risk of other incidents. You can have fireworks misfires. There have been council organised New Year's Eve events in other areas where that's happened and caused injury, in addition to the environmental impacts as well. So not a fan of it, but I did note we did have some discussion about exploring alternative options as we need to make a transition as things change over the years to come. Thanks.
Any other speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We'll move into closed council. The Chief Executive Officer will now advise the council if any written submissions have been received relating to any item advertised for consideration by a closed meeting of Orange City Council.
No such submissions have been made.
In accordance with Local Government Act 1993 and Local Government General Regulation 2021, in opinion of the CEO, the following business is of the kind referred in Section 10A2 of the Act and should be dealt with in a confidential session of the council meeting closed to the press and public. 6.1, proposed sale vacant land 94 Woodward Street for development for social and affordable housing. 6.2, Shop 3 Lays Arcade are both classified confidential under the provision of Section 10A2. Information that would be disclosed confer a commercial advantage of a person with whom the council is conducting or proposed to conduct business. 6.3, Submission Redaction Report 9th of July 2024 is classified confidential under the provision of Section 10A2. Information that would be disclosed prejudice the maintenance of law. Can I have someone move that we go into closed? Move. Thank you, Councillor Whitten. Seconded by Councillor Floyd. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried.